In a different reality, as the sun cast its dying light across the skyline of Coruscant, Mace Windu stood resolute in the Chancellor's office, his gaze steady and unwavering. His mission to confront Palpatine, the Sith Lord who had infiltrated the Republic's highest seat of power, had led him here. Yet what he hadn't anticipated was Anakin Skywalker, the Chosen One, arriving at the most pivotal moment. Anakin's expression was conflicted, torn between loyalty to the Jedi Order and an allegiance to the man who had manipulated his heart's deepest fears. Palpatine, or Darth Sidious, reveled in the tension, his dark influence pulsating in the room. He had carefully stoked the fires of Anakin's desperation, whispering promises that only the Sith's forbidden knowledge could spare Padme's life. Anakin's inner turmoil was palpable, his hesitation reflecting both fear and hope that perhaps, just perhaps, there was a way to salvage everything he held dear. Windu, however, was undeterred by Anakin's presence. His primary objective was the Sith Lord who had cloaked himself in deception and corruption. A glimmer of warning in his eye, Windu spoke with the force of a hammer. "Anakin, you're confused. Sidious has clouded your mind with his lies. Step back and let me end this." Anakin hesitated, his breathing quickening. The anguish in his face was clear, and he seemed to struggle with himself, caught in a battle of wills. Palpatine, ever the puppeteer, seized the moment to taunt them both, his voice slithering through the air. "Don't listen to him, Anakin. The Jedi don't trust you. They fear your power. Only I can show you the true potential of the Force." Anakin's resolve seemed to fray, and Mace noticed his hand inching toward his lightsaber. Windu had seen Anakin's prowess on the battlefield, his raw strength unmatched, his instincts near unstoppable. But here, within the walls of the Republic's heart, there could be no faltering. Palpatine's influence was like a poison that had seeped deep into the young Jedi's soul. Windu knew that if Anakin's trust in the Jedi Order was to be salvaged, he needed to see the truth of the Sith. "You're under his control, Anakin," Mace said, his voice steady but layered with urgency. "Open your eyes. Look at what he's done to you, what he's made you believe. You think he'll keep his promises once he has full control?" Anakin's expression darkened, his fingers tightening on his lightsaber's hilt. He was a storm, bottled and barely contained. Palpatine, sensing an opportunity, pushed further, his voice a thread of darkness winding around Anakin's heart. "The Jedi have only ever held you back, Anakin. They're afraid of your power. But together, you and I could bring peace to the galaxy. End this madness, and I'll save Padme. You don't need him." Palpatine nodded subtly in Windu's direction, dismissing him as a mere inconvenience, a barrier to everything Anakin desired. Windu, realizing the hold Palpatine had over Anakin, made his choice. He would have to fight Anakin if necessary to free him from the grasp of this dark power. He ignited his amethyst blade, the glow illuminating his face, sharp and determined. "Anakin," he said quietly, sorrow edging into his voice, "if you stand in my way, I won't hold back." Anakin's eyes narrowed, and he activated his own lightsaber, the familiar hum filling the room, a piercing echo of his internal struggle. For a heartbeat, the room was silent save for the whirring energy of their lightsabers. And then, with a thunderous clash, the battle began. Mace moved like a force of nature, his Vaapad form a controlled fury, flowing with the dark energy he sensed radiating from both Sidious and Anakin. He met Anakin's strikes with practiced precision, his movements swift and calculated. But Anakin, fueled by anger and desperation, attacked with unrelenting ferocity, each blow more intense than the last. Their lightsabers sparked as they clashed, the hiss and crackle of energy filling the room. Anakin's strikes were fierce, raw with power and emotion, but Mace was a master, his experience guiding him as he sidestepped and parried each blow with deft accuracy. The duel was not just a battle of physical prowess, it was a struggle of ideologies, of trust broken and faith eroded. Palpatine watched, a wicked smile playing on his lips, as the two warriors clashed, his delight at their conflict barely concealed. He was the architect of their ruin, the manipulator who had driven a wedge into the heart of the Jedi. Every strike Anakin landed, every moment of hesitation Mace displayed, was a testament to Sidious's control over them both. He relished the chaos, knowing that no matter who emerged victorious, he had already won by corrupting the Chosen One's soul. But as the fight wore on, something shifted in Anakin. The rage that had driven him began to mutate, fueled not just by fear of losing Padme, but by a deepening hatred for the man who had orchestrated this turmoil. Palpatine's manipulative words, the promises, the lies all coalesced into a singular truth. He was a pawn in a Sith's game. A flicker of realization dawned in Anakin's eyes, even as his movements remained aggressive. The betrayal ran deeper than he had allowed himself to acknowledge, and that understanding festered, transforming his anger from a blinding rage to something colder, more calculating. Mace sensed the shift too, but he could not allow himself to relax. Even if Anakin's focus was wavering, the dark side had a way of weaving itself around one's emotions, twisting them into a trap. "Anakin," he called out amid the fray, "you have the power to end this, to save everything you care about. Don't let him control you." Anakin's lightsaber faltered just for a moment, and Mace seized the opportunity, pushing him back with a powerful thrust. But the hesitation, as slight as it was, marked a turning point. Anakin turned his gaze from Mace to Palpatine, a searing intensity in his eyes, as if he were staring through the Sith Lord and seeing, truly seeing, the web of lies for what they were. Palpatine's promises, his supposed power to save Padme, felt hollow now, a deception crafted to ensnare him. In that moment of clarity, Anakin's fury found a new target. His hand, once uncertain, tightened around his lightsaber as he stepped toward Palpatine, his movement slow but deliberate. The Sith Lord, noticing the shift, attempted to placate him, his voice softening, laced with insidious reassurance. "Anakin, remember what we spoke about. Together we can save her." But Anakin's gaze was cold, his eyes filled not with the wide-eyed desperation of before, but with a hardened resolve. The extent of Palpatine's manipulation surged through him like a tidal wave, crashing against the remnants of the man he had once looked up to, the man he had almost betrayed his entire order for. Windu watched, still on guard, his lightsaber held at the ready, as he observed the tense standoff between Anakin and Palpatine. He felt the balance tipping, the light breaking through the darkness, and he knew that in this moment, Anakin had made a choice. "Lies," Anakin whispered, the word hanging heavy in the air. His voice, filled with contempt, broke the silence, and with a single decisive strike, he lunged forward. Palpatine's face twisted in shock as the crimson blade of Anakin's lightsaber pierced through him. The Sith Lord's last expression was a mixture of disbelief and fury as his life slipped away, his machinations undone by the very weapon he had sought to wield. The room fell silent. The hum of Anakin's lightsaber ceased as he deactivated it, the blade retracting with a finality that echoed in the stillness. He looked down at the fallen body of the man who had twisted his every fear, every insecurity, into a weapon against him. There was no satisfaction in his gaze, only an emptiness that hinted at the toll of what he had done. Windu remained vigilant, though he lowered his lightsaber. He saw the turmoil that still plagued Anakin, the scars of a mind manipulated and used. There was a weariness in the young Jedi's face, as if he had glimpsed the abyss and realized how close he had come to succumbing to it. Anakin stood there, the silence of the room heavy, almost tangible. The lifeless form of Palpatine lay before him, the man who had woven his dark influence around him for years, exploiting his fears, twisting his ambitions. Anakin's breath was steady, but his heart pounded with the weight of what he had done, the weight of the realization dawning upon him. He had been so close to losing everything he held dear, so close to being consumed by the darkness. And now, in the cold aftermath of his choice, he felt an overwhelming emptiness settle within him. Mace Windu kept his gaze on Anakin, observing the storm of emotions playing across the young man's face. He felt the echoes of Anakin's turmoil, sensing that the internal struggle was far from over. In slaying Palpatine, Anakin had made the right decision, the difficult decision, but there was still darkness in him, darkness that would not simply vanish because of this single act. The Jedi Knight's soul had been tainted, scarred by the depth of betrayal he had endured, and nearly perpetuated himself. Mace knew that healing this wound would require more than time. "Anakin," Mace began, his voice softer now, tempered with understanding, "you've saved the Republic from a great darkness. But this path you were on, it could have led to a place even you couldn't come back from." Anakin's eyes lifted to meet Mace's, and a bitter, almost pained smile crossed his lips. "Save the Republic?" he echoed, his voice carrying a hint of irony. "What good is the Republic if I've lost everything in the process? All I wanted was to protect those I loved, and I almost gave in to the darkness to do it. He used me, manipulated me, and I let him." Windu nodded, understanding the weight of Anakin's words. "Yes, Palpatine preyed on your fears, your love, everything that made you vulnerable. But that doesn't make you weak, Anakin. The fact that you were able to turn against him, even after everything, shows that there is still light in you. The dark side didn't win today." Anakin's hands clenched, his face a mix of frustration and despair. "Maybe," he replied, his voice barely a whisper. "But at what cost? I betrayed the Jedi by coming here, by allowing myself to even consider siding with him. I wanted his power, Mace. I thought I needed it. And now, I don't know who I am anymore." Windu sensed the gravity of Anakin's words, the profound identity crisis that the young Jedi was facing. The chosen one, the supposed balance bringer, was now questioning his own place in the Order and in the galaxy itself. Mace knew that Anakin's path would not be an easy one from here. The doubts, the guilt, and the shame would linger. But he also understood that Anakin was not lost, not yet. He was on a precipice, and the Jedi Order would need to help him reclaim his faith in himself. "You are still Anakin Skywalker," Mace said firmly, "and you're still one of us. The Order isn't perfect, and we've all made mistakes. But together we can rebuild. The Republic will need us to help pick up the pieces of what Palpatine left behind. And you still have a place here, if you want it." The words seemed to reach Anakin, a flicker of hope crossing his eyes before he looked away, his expression troubled. "I don't know if I deserve it, Mace. After everything I've done, all the trust I broke, how can I return to the Jedi Order?" Mace took a step forward, placing a steadying hand on Anakin's shoulder. "Redemption is not about deserving, Anakin. It's about choosing the right path even after you've fallen. You faced the darkness and turned away from it. That alone speaks to the strength within you." Anakin considered this, his gaze drifting to the cityscape of Coruscant, where the last light of day was fading. The once vibrant skyline seemed muted, as if reflecting the aftermath of his inner conflict. The realization that he had been a hair's breadth away from succumbing to the dark side weighed heavily on him. He had nearly sacrificed everything he held sacred: Padme, the Jedi, the Republic, all for the illusions and false promises whispered by a Sith Lord. And now that the deception was broken, he was left to confront the wreckage of his own choices. "What happens now?" Anakin asked, his tone hollow and uncertain. Mace took a deep breath, his gaze steady as he looked at Anakin. "The Council will want to know what's happened here, and the Republic must be informed. Palpatine's schemes have run deeper than we could have imagined. But with the Sith gone, there's a chance to rebuild. The darkness has been purged from the highest levels of our government. We have a chance to restore the Republic to what it was meant to be." Anakin nodded, though the weight of the conversation still pressed down on him. "And what about me? After what I almost did, how can I ever find my way back?" Mace's expression softened, a rare moment of empathy breaking through his usual stern demeanor. "That's up to you, Anakin. The Order can guide you, but only if you're willing to let it. No one's expecting this to be easy, and the path to redemption isn't a straight one. But if you truly want to find your way back, the Jedi will help you." Anakin looked down at his hands, remembering how close they had come to unleashing his fury on Windu himself, to betraying his own kin. The idea of returning to the Order, of walking the hallowed halls of the temple, as if nothing had happened, seemed almost unbearable. But deep down, he knew that abandoning his calling now, after all that had transpired, would be a betrayal of everything he once held dear. If there was even a chance to make amends, to prove that he could still serve the light, then he would take it. "I don't know how I'll do it," Anakin admitted, his voice steady but fragile. "But I don't want to give up. I don't want the darkness to define me." Windu gave a small nod of approval. "Then let that be your guide, Anakin. Remember who you are and why you became a Jedi. The road ahead won't be easy, but you won't be walking it alone." The two stood in silence, the weight of their words settling over them. The dawn of a new era was upon them, an era without the shadow of the Sith looming over the galaxy. But in this quiet moment, as Anakin stood beside Windu, it became clear that the battle against darkness was not only external but one that each Jedi must confront within themselves. For Anakin, this journey would be long, marked by the scars left by his near fall and the hard-won resolve that had guided his final choice. The Republic was saved, but his redemption would be a journey all its own. The quiet in the Chancellor's office lingered, pressing down on Anakin as he absorbed the reality of what he had just done. The once grand room where Palpatine had spun countless webs of deceit now felt hollow, its opulence tainted by the memory of the Sith Lord's schemes. Anakin knew that the path forward would not be simple. Turning back to the Jedi after nearly falling into darkness would mean facing the repercussions, not just from the Council, but from within himself. Anakin shifted, glancing at Mace Windu, who had stood by him in his darkest moment, offering guidance instead of condemnation. Mace's expression was solemn, but his presence held a reassurance that Anakin wasn't alone in this. Together, they would have to confront the truth of what had unfolded within these walls, exposing the corruption that had nearly fractured the Republic beyond repair. "We need to inform the Council," Mace finally said, breaking the silence. "They must know what happened here and what Palpatine was planning." His influence ran deep, and there's no telling how far his control extended. Anakin nodded, feeling the weight of that responsibility. He knew that going back to the Council would mean revealing not only Palpatine's intentions, but also his own moment of weakness. He had allowed himself to be drawn toward the dark side, nearly succumbing to the seductive promise of power. But in facing that darkness, he had taken a decisive step back. It was a small victory, but one he intended to build upon. As they left the Chancellor's office, the shadows of Coruscant stretched across the halls, the silence almost ominous as they made their way to the Jedi Temple. The cityscape outside glittered with lights, a deceptive calm in the aftermath of the confrontation. But Anakin's mind was far from at ease. The memory of Palpatine's manipulations still haunted him, each word replaying in his mind, reminding him of how easily he had nearly thrown away everything he loved. Mace noticed Anakin's quiet reflection and offered a simple, grounding reminder. "The darkness you face today, it won't disappear overnight. Redemption is a journey, Anakin, and we're here to help you find your way." The temple loomed before them, its spires standing against the night sky like silent guardians of wisdom. Anakin's heart ached at the sight. This place had been his home, his sanctuary, and yet, in recent weeks, it had also felt like a prison of judgment and mistrust. Now, though, he was prepared to face whatever the Council had to say, no matter how difficult it would be. Upon entering the Council chamber, Mace and Anakin found the other members assembled, their expressions reflecting a mix of concern and curiosity. Yoda's calm gaze met Anakin's as he spoke, his tone gentle but penetrating. "Returned you have, Anakin. But much to explain, I sense there is." Mace stepped forward, recounting the events that had unfolded in the Chancellor's office, detailing Palpatine's identity as Darth Sidious, the Sith Lord who had orchestrated the Republic's decline from the shadows. He explained how Palpatine had attempted to corrupt Anakin, how he had manipulated the young Jedi's fears and love, turning them into tools of control. And then Mace revealed how Anakin, in a moment of clarity, had struck down the Sith, bringing an end to his reign of deceit. The Council listened in silence, absorbing the enormity of what had transpired. There was a gravity to the room, a shared understanding that the Republic would never be the same. Palpatine's betrayal had left scars on the galaxy, scars that would take time to heal. But there was also a sense of relief, a hope that perhaps, with the Sith gone, a new beginning was possible. Yoda's gaze turned to Anakin, his eyes wise and compassionate. "A difficult path you have walked, young Skywalker, but a choice made in light you have. Tempted by darkness you were, yet in the end resisted you did. Strong in you, the Force remains." Anakin bowed his head, the weight of Yoda's words settling over him. "I nearly gave in," he admitted, his voice filled with both regret and resolve. "I almost allowed myself to believe that power was the answer. I was willing to do anything to save Padme, to protect her. But I realize now that the path I was on, it would have destroyed everything I cared about." Mace's voice was steady as he addressed the Council. Palpatine preyed on his fears, twisting his intentions into something unrecognizable. But Anakin turned away from that darkness. He made the choice to save the Republic, and in doing so, he's shown the strength the Jedi Order placed in him from the beginning. The Council murmured in agreement, though there was still a solemn air about them. They understood the gravity of what Anakin had faced, and though he had ultimately made the right choice, they recognized the scars left by his confrontation with the Sith. Yoda spoke, his voice carrying both wisdom and caution. "Much healing you have, Anakin. The journey to redemption not swift it is, but ready to walk it you seem. Return to the Order you may, if willing you are to confront the darkness within." Anakin looked up, his gaze meeting Yoda's with a determination he hadn't felt in a long time. "I am," he replied, his voice steady. "I know it won't be easy, but I want to make things right. I want to protect the Republic, not by bending it to my will, but by serving it, by serving the people." The Council members nodded, acknowledging Anakin's resolve. They knew that his journey would be long and arduous, but his willingness to face his mistakes, to embrace the path of redemption, was a testament to his strength and courage. For a Jedi to confront his own darkness was one of the most difficult trials, and Anakin had shown that he was ready to undertake it. Mace looked at Anakin, a hint of pride in his eyes. "The Republic owes you a debt, Anakin. You ended a darkness that had corrupted it from within. But remember, the greatest battle is often within ourselves. The choice to remain in the light, to stay true to the Jedi, is one you'll have to make every day." Anakin nodded, understanding the depth of Mace's words. He had witnessed firsthand how easily the dark side could seduce even the most well-intentioned souls. The struggle would be lifelong, but for the first time he felt a sense of peace, a clarity he hadn't experienced in years. Yoda gave a final nod of approval. "Anakin Skywalker, welcome back to the Jedi Order you are. Together, rebuild we will. Restore balance we must." The meeting adjourned, and Anakin found himself walking the halls of the temple, his heart lighter, yet tinged with a sense of responsibility. He knew that his actions today would be remembered, not only as the defeat of the Sith, but as a testament to his own battle against the darkness within. He had chosen the light, and now it was up to him to honor that choice with every step he took. As he stood alone, gazing out over the city of Coruscant, the sprawling lights twinkling like stars against the night sky, Anakin felt a new sense of purpose. The journey ahead would be one of atonement, of healing, both for himself and for the Republic. But he was no longer a pawn of fear, no longer bound by the chains of manipulation and deceit. He was Anakin Skywalker, a Jedi, and he would honor the trust placed in him by walking the path of the light, no matter how difficult it might be. And somewhere in the city below, as dawn began to break, Anakin knew that the Republic would awaken to a new era, an era free of the shadow of the Sith, where he and the Jedi could finally work to build a galaxy of peace, justice, and balance. As the first light of dawn crept over Coruscant's skyline, Anakin felt a quiet strength fill him, a renewed sense of belonging. The Jedi Temple, though a place he once viewed as restrictive and judgmental, now felt like a beacon of hope, a place where he could begin the long road of redemption, and perhaps find the peace that had eluded him for so long. With Palpatine's shadow removed from the Republic, Anakin knew he had a responsibility not only to rebuild trust with the Jedi, but also to uphold the ideals they fought for. He spent the following days under close observation, engaged in deep meditation sessions guided by Masters Yoda and Obi-Wan. The Masters helped him confront the echoes of darkness still lingering within him. The road was arduous. Every corner of his mind seemed to hide memories of his temptations and fears. But Anakin understood that facing these dark fragments was necessary. Through these meditations, he began to unravel the threads of anger and desperation that Palpatine had twisted around him. Obi-Wan, in particular, was a steady presence throughout this process. Though initially disappointed and shocked by Anakin's near turn, he was quick to offer his understanding and forgiveness. Obi-Wan's compassion was a balm to Anakin's soul, a reminder of their bond that transcended any single mistake. They spent long hours talking, Obi-Wan guiding him through reflections on humility, patience, and trust, qualities that Anakin realized he had overlooked in his pursuit of power. One evening, after a particularly intense meditation, Anakin and Obi-Wan stood together on a temple balcony, gazing out at the vast cityscape. The cool night air felt refreshing against their skin as they spoke, the quiet allowing them to share the words that had gone unsaid for too long. "I know I let you down, Obi-Wan," Anakin said, his voice heavy with regret. "I nearly destroyed everything, nearly threw away our friendship. I can't forgive myself for that." Obi-Wan turned to him, his face softened by empathy. "Anakin, I won't pretend it didn't hurt to see you struggling, knowing I couldn't fully reach you. But remember, you turned back. You chose the light, even when the darkness was right in front of you. That takes strength, and more importantly, it shows who you truly are." Anakin's eyes met Obi-Wan's, gratitude shining within them. He had always admired his former master, but now he felt a new sense of respect, seeing the patience and wisdom that Obi-Wan embodied. "I don't know what I'd do without you," he admitted, his voice quiet but sincere. "Then let's ensure you never have to find out," Obi-Wan replied with a small smile, patting Anakin's shoulder. "We'll get through this together. The Council believes in you, Anakin. Yoda believes in you. And I know you're capable of great things." With the support of his friends and mentors, Anakin felt a newfound determination. His redemption wouldn't be instant, but it would be genuine. He embraced the small steps, training with other Jedi, helping with missions, and, perhaps most importantly, teaching. The Council had offered him a role to instruct younger Jedi, a task that helped him find purpose and reaffirm his values. Through teaching, he found himself seeing the wonder of the Force anew, through the eyes of those who hadn't yet seen the darker sides of the galaxy. Their enthusiasm was contagious, and it reminded him of why he had joined the Order in the first place. But despite the hope he found in the temple, there were still shadows to face. News of Palpatine's true identity as Darth Sidious shook the Republic, sparking panic and mistrust. The galaxy had witnessed the near collapse of its democracy, and restoring faith in its institutions would take time. The Jedi, once viewed as peacekeepers, were now scrutinized, their every move analyzed by those who questioned why they hadn't detected the Sith Lord sooner. Anakin felt the weight of that skepticism, knowing he had been closer to Palpatine than anyone. The Senate held inquiries, uncovering the breadth of Palpatine's manipulation. Senators spoke passionately about reforms, vowing to prevent a single individual from wielding such unchecked power again. The Jedi were called upon to share their knowledge of the Sith, to explain how such a deception could have gone undetected. Anakin, as a witness to Palpatine's deceit, provided insights into how the Sith had exploited his own fears, using his relationships and vulnerabilities as weapons. He shared his experiences openly, detailing how Palpatine had preyed on his concern for Padme, his doubts about the Jedi, and his desire for strength. The hearings were painful, dredging up memories he would rather leave behind, but he knew it was necessary. He had to be transparent, to show the galaxy that even the strongest could be manipulated by darkness if they strayed from their values. The hearings led to sweeping reforms in both the Republic and the Jedi Order. New practices were adopted to ensure the transparency of Jedi actions, and training now included intense instruction on resisting dark side temptations. The Order itself restructured, recognizing that their isolation and rigid traditions had contributed to the vulnerability that Palpatine had exploited. The Jedi Temple opened its doors to the public, allowing citizens to witness the training of Jedi firsthand. This transparency fostered a newfound sense of trust, helping the galaxy see the Jedi not as mystical warriors removed from society, but as guardians who were accountable and invested in the Republic's well-being. For Anakin, these changes were both heartening and challenging. He appreciated the new direction of the Jedi, but he also knew that his journey of redemption went beyond public reforms. It was a personal mission, one he would carry for the rest of his life. His focus turned inward, to a daily commitment of humility and self-awareness. Each day he reminded himself of the price of fear and anger, striving to embody the patience and balance he had once resisted. In the quiet of his private quarters, he meditated often, seeking peace within the Force. The visions of Padme, once a constant presence haunting his mind, had begun to fade, replaced by a more profound understanding of love. He realized now that true love was not about control or possession, but about trust and acceptance. This revelation brought him a sense of peace, allowing him to let go of the obsession that had nearly cost him everything. And so the galaxy moved forward. The Republic healed, and the Jedi adapted, learning from their past mistakes. Anakin too transformed, emerging from the ordeal a wiser, more tempered man. He knew his legacy would forever be marked by his near fall, but he also knew that he had been given a rare second chance to make amends. The darkness would always be a part of him, a shadow that lingered at the edges of his mind. But now, he was no longer afraid. He had faced that darkness, acknowledged it, and chosen the light. Years later, as a new generation of Jedi filled the temple halls, Anakin found himself looking out over Coruscant once again, the city that had witnessed his greatest struggles and triumphs. He had walked the path of redemption, and though it was a journey with no end, he had learned to embrace it with humility and gratitude. He felt a sense of fulfillment, knowing he was no longer the same impulsive young man who had once been so easily swayed. He was a protector, a mentor, and most importantly, a Jedi who understood the true nature of the Force not as a tool for control, but as a guide to harmony and balance. And as the stars emerged in the sky above, he knew that, despite everything, he had finally found his place in the galaxy.